to anybody what you just got done, Attorney Bandy Castle. So, but there's answers out there for you. So thank you very much.
So, back on the agenda, we've got really two items here, consideration of the incentive component of the development. So the developer's asking for incentives to essentially put in the infrastructure for the village to pick up those costs, with the village to recover those costs later on through the tax revenues generated by the developments on those properties that infrastructure improvements open up. And then, secondly, the second consideration is that a portion of this is being, the request is that a portion of this be referred to the Community Development Authority for their consideration. That's a separate organization, I mean, it's part of the village, but it's a separate entity that has to make its own decision. But before it gets to that, it needs a direction from you to send this off to them for their consideration. And again, Alan, I don't know if you've talked with Brad to find out what that split is, how much is going on?
No, wasn't sure there was going to be a split.
Okay. Yeah, so I think we need to know, well, first of all, the village needs to know how much it's going to be asked to commit for, and then, or commit to financially, and then when it goes to the CDA has to look at some kind of a commitment. And I thought, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, I thought there was sort of an initial phase, it was around 300,000 that was coming from the village, and then a secondary component to that from the village.
Yeah,
and then
I think if it was, I think comfortably, if the village's part would be around 500,000.
Okay.
And then the rest would go toward the CDA.
Which, with the CDA did do, they would reimburse the village.
Well, right. The way the CDA component of this would work is that coming from the village with a dollar amount for a request for the CDA to fund, the CDA would then issue a bond, because that's how they generate their revenue for developments. They would go out and issue a Community Development Authority bond in whatever amount is determined to be necessary. The revenues from that bond would fund that portion of the development. Where does the money come to pay that back then? Well, again, it comes from the taxes being generated by that development. So instead of all the money coming from the village, part of it comes from the CDA. That same revenue source of the taxes off of those developments would then fund the repayment of the village's portion of this, and also repay the CDA's bond. So the money would be coming into the village would use a portion of it to repay its loan for their component of it, and then a portion of it would have to go back to the CDA to pay, or to give the CDA the money to pay their portion of the bond. So there's, what you end up with is a sort of a split developers agreement. There's one developers agreement between the developer and the village. There's another developers agreement between the developer and the CDA that talks about the CDA providing them the money, the developer agreeing to build the project, and then generate the revenue to pay that back. And then there is there is an agreement between the village and the CDA that the village would turn over a portion of the tax dollars generated by that income, or by that property tax revenue, back to the CDA so they could make their payments. So it's just a different funding source, but it still comes through the village. One of the things that I'm not certain yet, that it's really more of a Brad question than one for me, is that there will probably be a period of time in the outset where the CDA will not necessarily have all the funds available to make its interest payments. There is a way, and again, this is a CDA question, not a village question necessarily, but there is a way that the CDA, for example, if the CDA was needed to borrow $1 million to cover their portion of this funding, they might actually borrow $1.2 million so that they've got the revenues in place to pay the first couple of years of the debt service on that borrowing, because they're not going to, the project is going to be like 2 years out before it starts generating the revenue. It's got to be built, and then the tax base goes up based on what's built. So we did that, I believe, with either the Mako
Yeah.
property or the Karch property. There was one of them that we actually borrowed, or I should say the CDA borrowed essentially its first couple of years of debt service as part of the
That was
borrow.
Colonial Court.
Yeah, so, again, that's something that the CDA will have to work out with Brad to see how they actually facilitate the payment schedule. Then there's another component to that gets a little bit more complicated too, because you don't know what the debt service is necessarily going to be until you try to sell the bonds. Because Brad essentially has to make an estimate of what they're going to sell those bonds for in order to make a determination of what amount of revenue is going to be generated by the sale of the bonds. How many do you have to sell to reach that amount that's needed? So there's a lot of work to be done on this if you authorize it to go forward. And at this point, too, let me just say this too, at this point, I guess I don't want to hear this, but at this point, it's really the exploratory part of it. You're not directly committing to anything at this point. You're authorizing it to go to the next step. And that's where Brad will come up with all the information. Brad had another meeting to go to tonight from what I recall on Friday that he talked about, but he would be available for our next meeting and also the CDA meeting once that's set up to start working on those projections. But again, from our discussion on Friday, if it goes forward from here, the next steps, the funds could be available within the next 4 to 6 months possibly, depending on how fast everything kind of comes together.
I think it makes sense to bring this discussion to our CDA. Are there any downsides? I didn't hear.
Just incurring more debt.
But the debt is the debt, no matter if it's with the CDA or with the village, right? There's no specific downside to bringing the CDA into this conversation.
Right, not the CD. In fact, it's a benefit to do that. It's a
Yeah.
benefit to the village because the village doesn't have to borrow as much.
Yeah.
So if that whole idea, what is the alternative to that? Does that become all of you? I mean, is that's what we're talking about? It's either this or it's that? I mean, it's-
You created TIF for last year
Yeah,
for the hotels and stuff. And so TIF is created so for projects like this. Because if not for TIF, it wouldn't happen. So, maybe I could do a portion of that. But again, it's a huge expenditure when you have to put in all the infrastructure. That's why there's not 100 people knocking on your door to do it. You know what I'm saying? It's gotta make sense.
right.
And it's really the only way that it could get done. So the alternative is to not have it, I guess.
Yeah, okay.
And the funding from the village would be for infrastructure, so I think, correct me now if I'm wrong, but it would be for streets and roads, sewer, water, curb and gutter,
Yeah.
electrical utilities and those kinds of things. So essentially, the public-private utility stuff would be what this funding is going for. So you're not building buildings, it's not building, the apartments or whatever, it's just putting the streets and the roads in to open up that area for development.
Makes sense.
And then it works for like ponds, the stormwater management, which our
Yeah.
DNR has made us get crazy on.
Is that what that is actually?
Yeah, that is, yeah.
Lake
well, that-
Pulaski.
yeah. Yes, we need it. But yeah, so things like that, and some site work, but nothing with buildings.
This is a but if we do this, we see what could happen. If we don't do it, the only thing we know for certain is we got 50-some acres of farmland that,
Yeah, it's the corn standing there instead, you know. No, I guess, you know, I think well, you know, I mean, you've been progressive and we've made it successful. You know, in our predictions, you know, I'm trying to be conservative, where I'm putting lower values on the buildings and actually ending up finding that they're gonna be worth more. So that extra revenue is gonna go for water loop. I mean, you guys need to do the water loop from, what is this one? Pelican? Yeah, all the way over. You know, I think we're gonna create, over those 20 years, you're gonna have excess funds to do those types of projects. And that's what's neat about it. Plus, you know, I mean, we're making the payments and the interest payments. And if you have to borrow money in the front to make the payments for the first 2 years, that gets paid off too. You know, so it's, and then it's guaranteed behind that, behind the taxes. So it's the reason that you created a TIF. And, you know, I hope that you guys are willing to move forward with it. A huge thing is that, you know, I wasn't, you know, I learned first about the CDA on Friday. So that's going to take a little longer to get those funds. So the first portion, or the village portion that they may consider, that you guys may consider, could come sooner. I'm hoping that we can move sooner on that part, just so I can get started. And then down the road, that the CDA comes later. And it sounded to me like the CDA could actually, once they have the total funds, they could go back to the village for their portion that they do in the beginning. Okay, so.
So we need to go to the next step or stage or whatever that you mentioned. Do we have to make a motion to do that, or?
yeah, and I want to explain it a little bit. You know, this has been 4 years in the works. You know, this didn't happen overnight. And it was me posing a question to Bill and Brad both. You know, shouldn't we be using the CDA to do this instead of the village? Because then it doesn't count towards our debt.
Okay.
And, you know, we're about 3 million away from, you know, and I'd like to conserve that, preserve that. And, you know, it just makes, I think, more sense to create the CDA as a separate entity that manages that. And it's a separate fund that doesn't count against our village indebtedness. And, you know, I would hate to slow this project down, you know, I mean, it took so long to get it off the ground, it's got momentum now. I'd like to keep that momentum going. So I feel that, and Brad, I think, and Bill agree that that's probably the most responsible way to move forward.
Got to work together.
You know, like, the highway construction and street construction that we've done, it's been pretty consistent that about 60 to 65% of every dollar went towards sewer and water and lights, not streets. So,
The way I see this, we're a young community. We're 106 years old, okay? In the lifespan of a community, that's very young. That's getting out of high school and borrowing money for college. Getting out of college and borrowing money. When I retire, I don't want to be borrowing money to buy a home or borrowing money to go back to school. But this is, right now, we are young, we need to borrow. We need this in my eyes, and I think I'll make a motion that we continue both with A and B, continue this conversation with the CDA as well as with the developers.
Close the floor first.
I Yeah, I know, we haven't closed it yet. Yeah, motion to close the floor
So moved.
by Roger, second by Bob Jayeski, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. You can sit down now, Al.
Thank you.
All right. Now, A, consideration of the developer's incentive component of development to consider, to continue.
Continue the conversation.
Continue.
As well as Part B, get the CDA involved in this conversation.
To reactivate the CDA.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Doug, seconded by Chris. Sure.
Bruce Birchkowski.
Yes.
Roger Birchkowski.
Yes.
Robert Gieske.
Yes.
Doug Prentice.
Yes.
Chris Smith.
Yes.
Robert Van Lennon.
Yes.
And Reed Woodward.
Yes. Thank you very much. 9.10 is to consider and approve the municipal court bond schedule effective July 1st, 2016, per Judge Robert Bentley. Judge?
Normally every 4 or 5 years now, because I've been municipal judge for 42 years, it seems like this is the 8th edition, so you can figure out every 5 years is probably where a bond schedule is made. The bond schedule is put together by municipal court with the help of the police chief, and it's not all easy to let the court run like they want to run it, because by state statutes, we must adopt a bond schedule, and this is for the three of you here. I've been trying to make it public access to everybody. If you look at it, Karen, do you have the regular simple one? This bond schedule is what the police officers use when they issue a citation. It has an ordinance number, and that ordinance number that you see there is adopted by state statutes, and that state statutes comes from this book. I get that every year. The state puts that out. The state statute book is revised Uniform State Traffic Deposit Schedule. We get it every year, but the state changes on there are not all that critical every year. Sometimes it takes 10 years by the time they make a change in here. So, but we try to make it good. If you look at the deposit here is literally what the defendant is issued in the citations, and then you take the special assessments and costs. And if you go, and then the total amount is on the right-hand side. So if a citation is issued for, we'll take for example, if a citation is issued here for $200 or $100, there's $97 in cost, and total for the defendant to pay would be $197. So basically, the deposit the village gets with the court costs, and the rest goes to the county and the state, and so on line. Now, this bond schedule is what's used by the police department, and that's what they're going to use to issue citations to. On their citations, they issue the ordinance number, and then the state statute number is next to it, so it's adopted. All these ordinances that are here has to be adopted by state statutes. If it's not legal for the court to use it. This will go in effect, the officers will use this bond schedule in June when they start writing citations, and we will be getting them at the court in August. And what the court uses over here is a breakdown. And if you can see that over here, Karen is going to break that down, or Elise is going to break that down. So when the defendant comes into court and then he has a $100 fine, he's got $38. Court cost, special assessment 26, crime lab at 13, county assessment at 10, winds up at $187. So the defendant needs to know that when they're in court, so they know what he's or she is paying for. So again, all I need is by state statutes, the court needs approval by the board to go into effect. So
It's July 1.
that's what we need to do today. So for the new members that are elected, maybe you get to understand. If you have any problems with that, stop in my office and I can explain to you what goes on. A lot of those costs that are on here are, might seem kind of high, and you'll see NA on there, which is mandatory appearance, and the only reason for mandatory appearance is that the defendant that gets the citations for underage alcohol, he needs a little counseling more than just a ticket, so you can, court can assess him whatever and tell him he's on probation or he's going to jail or whatever is going to happen. So that's what a mandatory appearance is. So upon your approval, we can have the police department go ahead and start issuing citations in June.
July 1.
July for August. Correct. Okay, that's all.
Thank you, Judge. Do I have a motion to close the floor?
So moved.
Bruce, second by
Yep.
Doug? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
I could entertain a motion to approve the municipal court bond schedule
So moved.
by Roger,
Second.
by Bob Gieske. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 11, to consider to approve payment request number 1, Shoe Construction Incorporated, contract 295-16-1, in the amount of $119,473.90. That's Village Hall PD Edition Phase 3, as per Paul Welter of Broadway Associates.
Well, this is for work through the 15th of April, and obviously work has been ongoing since then. The value of the work that we have standing out there is easily double or more of what this request is for. This is just the first request. Second request will be available for the June meeting. But, this was they probably had more work than this done at the time you submitted the request.
Right.
So it's very much in line with our progress.
Could I have a motion to approve the request by
Second.
Bob? Second by Bob and Bob. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Now, we're going to have a couple of change orders, some of them positive, some of them negative. The construction is well ahead of schedule, is all I can say. And we've probably agreed to go ahead with some of these, but I want to keep you informed. Number 12, change order 2A resulted in a $6,890 credit. And so I know you're going to approve that.
Actually, the total for this change order is $10,820.
That's getting better.
Well, you're confusing me even more.
You want me to explain it?
Did you go through it all at once, so then I can vote?
Sure. Change order number 2A, number 2, if you'll recall, was the roofing for the existing building. That was, and Karen caught that error in my part and made that a 2A. But, so number 2A, I don't know if you got the second page with the summary there, kind of walks through there. The first item for $120 credit was some plumbing that didn't get done, and Shoe had planned on busting up some floor to put that plumbing in. It didn't get done, wasn't necessary, so they provided the credit for just sawing out the floor. The second item was a bigger item, number 2 there, a credit of $11,300. And this was a result of two things. Bidding an alternate manufacturer for this, it's like these split unit heating and air conditioning units, okay? And there was an error in the plan that called for a much larger size than what was required. So between the combination of a alternate manufacturer and the smaller unit, a nice credit of $11,300. And I had our mechanical sub-consultant look at that, and he thought that number was fair.
Is that keeping temperature in just one space then?
That one was for the IT room, I believe.
Oh, wow. Okay.
There's two of these units in here. One is for the IT room and one is for... the other was for the evidence room in the back. So that was a nice credit. And then in this, we also talked about at the last board meeting, 2 board meetings ago, I guess. We talked about all these 3 items, was to provide possibility for electric at the southwest corner of the new addition to run for a new sign in the future, just for future use, for $600. So the aggregate of this change order is a credit to the village of $10,820. So that's number 2A. You just go right into 3 and 4 here?
Sure.
3, okay. Number 3 and 4 we have not talked about previously. I'll walk through that. So number 3 you have, I'll give you number 4 in a moment. Number 3, again, the second page, the summary. The light pole, we did talk about that at the last meeting. That was approved, I guess based on the discussion. The 40-foot light pole to provide adequate lighting for the new access to the garages and to add some lighting to the existing parking lot and removing the existing pole that's out there. Number 2 there, on the overhead door operators, came to be realized that those are really going to be kind of wash bays for the squad cars, and we needed to add some protection for the longevity and for the protection of the people using it. Some electrical upgrades to allow for washing and not rotting out, the 4-wides at the doors and the operators themselves. So there was a upgrade there. That was $1,980. Number 3 was removing, I just confused myself here a little bit. Let me
1,600 foot slab trenching?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. I misstated something on, this is the plumbing that was eliminated. Number 1 on change order 2A was to not do the demo of the plumbing in the existing IT room over here. So I apologize, I got that confused. This one, number 3, is the plumbing for the new work, trenching that out. So that was a credit of $783 to